Well, hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. Our feature tonight is Damian Dressick, and let me tell you a little bit of something about Damian. And this is basically me just reading along. So let me get this going here. Oh, awesome! There we go. So if you really want to find out everything about Damian, you can go to damiandressick.com, but here's basically who he is. He was born and raised in Pennsylvania's cold country. Damian Dressick is the author of the novel 40 Patchtown. His creative work has appeared in more than 50 literary journals and anthologies, including W.W. Norton's New Micro, Post Road, a Boston favorite, New Orleans Review, Cutbank, and Fail Better. My favorite, Smokelong Quarterly. He's a Blue Mountain Residency Fellow. Dressick is the winner of the Harriette Arnow Award and the Jesse Stuart Prize. His collection, Fables of Deconstruction, is out right now. It's not forthcoming, and because it's a little bit past early 2021, so you can buy that now. He co-hosts WCONA Live, which is a reading series that brings some of the best Appalachian writers out to the world, and you can view that online as well. So without anything else going on from me, because I speak certainly enough, I would love to turn it over to Damian Dressick.
Good evening. Thanks, Tim, for having me on the Dire series. You've had so many amazing people, and I'm just really grateful. So tonight I'm going to be actually reading from my new collection, Fables of the Deconstruction, from Clash Books. They're doing great things up there in Troy, New York. Really proud to be associated with those folks, Lisa and Christoph. So I know we're because we're online, we're going to do something short. So if you're unsure whether you want to hear me or not, I'll give you a chance to. So if I give you one story, it's called "If I Could Only Tell You One Story." Parts 1 and 2. There's two parts. And it's for Jan Beatty. She's a Pittsburgh poet. It's dedicated to her. If I could only tell you one story, it would be this. One crisp fall afternoon near the beginning of October, when the autumn leaves shone like a bouquet of golden chalices lit through rose glass cathedral windows, my mother did a little dance. A jig or a reel perhaps, before launching herself from the observation deck of a mid-rise building in Albany, New York. Halfway between the blue screen of sky and the pavement, hard and black, she was transformed into a sleek bird, rapacious and perfect, and never to be seen again. Part 2. If I could only tell you one story, and it had to be true, it would be this. When I was 14 years old, my mother caught me stealing dishes from the mayor of Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'd been helping out in the city hall kitchen where my mother worked as a maid. When she saw me, my trousers stuffed with teacups, my shirt bloused with salad plates, she scowled before she smiled and said, "The silver, my precious, precious idiot, take the silver." So, I read a lot about this kind of conflict. And sometimes I think about where that comes from. This is a story that was actually in Post Road, a Boston favorite. It's called Boyhood. When I was a young boy growing up in a steel town, preoccupied with collapsing in on itself, I wanted to shoot my father with a .22 caliber rifle. He'd given me the single-shot bolt-action rifle for my 10th birthday, and for many nights afterward, I fantasized about striding into his bedroom in the middle of the night and pushing the barrel flush against his chest as he slept and pulling the trigger. In these imaginings, I would always give some impassioned, self-justifying speech, right before squeezing the trigger and seeing the muzzle flash and hearing the crack of the rimfire cartridge propelled down the blued barrel. My father, a former infantryman in the Marine Corps, would have to listen to these speeches because he would be too scared to move. In my pre-assassination screeds, I would trumpet my secret strength, extol my individuality, and rant about how I wasn't going to take any more of his beatings. Some mornings, after nights like this, I would ride in my father's secondhand car down to the unemployment office. My father and his buddies, most of whom were also laid off from the town's steel mills or bituminous mines, referred to these trips as going to town. Once, in the afternoon, as a boy growing up in a steel town, gone pretty far irrevocably to shit, I attempted to stab an uncle of mine to death with an 8-inch fish filleting knife. My uncle was a large, bushy bearded man, laid off from his job as a railcar welder. I walked in on him beating my grandmother with a leather belt. She had fallen to her knees in the eat-in kitchen of her frame house. One of her brown hands gripped the formica corner of the tabletop. She held her other hand above her head, elbow bent at an acute angle to ward off the blows. My uncle's voice filled the room like whiskey can fill a glass. My grandmother's breath was all gasps. Tears streamed from her eyes. She pleaded, "Stop, Eddie, oh, please, stop." Oblivious to anything but his own rage, my uncle raised the belt and brought it down again. This happened once, then twice. The third time he brought the belt above his head, I picked up the fillet knife from a cutting board next to a brook trout on the sideboard near the door. I ran toward my uncle, cursing him, fillet knife held out in front of me like a sword. My uncle turned. With the back of his hand, he knocked me sprawling. When my father came in from parking the car, he saw the condition my grandmother was in, put my uncle in a wrestling hold, later called the volunteer ambulance service. What I'm trying to bring home to you is this. Even though the biggest part of me feels like these things happened in another lifetime, happened almost to someone else, that's never going to be the important part. Day or night, I can be inside out with the need to twist this darkness into some trompe-l'oeil kind of virtue, into a mask I can wear like grace. So I did a residency thing at Colgate, and it was a really terrific experience. I got a lot of, I felt like really productive time to write there. They do a writers conference every year, and it's a really fun thing. So this is a story that got written there. It's called Young Americans, August 1979. This is another thing steeped a little bit in my own youth, I suppose. Whirling across the spongy deck behind his parents' single wide, we slide from one rain-slicked 2x4 to the next. Tuxedo shirt unbuttoned to my navel, prom gown ripped to accommodate his shoulders. We spin between the dripping rails, twist, feather step, clothes change, freeze. Wrenching a hank of hair, I pull him forward, force him down with the meat of my palm. On his knees, he scores the paleness of my stomach with lipstick traces toward the jockstrap stuffed with knotted panties. I offer nothing but a performative sneer. My fingers push across his cheekbones, smearing pancake makeup into eyeliner. I revel in the chiaroscuro, my dark nails against his platinum wig in the streetlight haze. A mile down the tracks, our 3-street town feels far away as Mars. The saxophone flourishes, echoing into the jack pines. Hold him like he's holding me, like I have never been held before. This flashbulb moment is nothing less than transfiguration. We are being reimagined by these key changes, transformed by that snarky baritone. Its haunting melisma charges our molecules as we chasse in the drizzle. From here on, things will only get more haphazard, glossy. Our planes will never streak into Iowa cornfields. Even our riots will reincarnate as history lessons. I think that's a few minutes.
It sure is. Thanks. That was some stellar verbiage for sure.
Well, thank you.
I just sound like Spicoli from Fast Times. So yeah,
You order pizza for all of us. It's our time.
yeah, stellar verbiage, dude. So anyway, the book, that's from Fables of the Deconstruction. Now, is that a nod toward REM's Fables of the Reconstruction?
It is, in fact, yes. Living in the sort of deindustrialized Midwest, I don't think anybody when I was working on this, nobody was bothering to reconstruct anything. It was sort of tearing it apart and reveling in the chaos. And that was also, if you see it's also you can see there's Frederick Jameson is actually on the calendar. There's a methamphetamine addicted grizzly bear who works as a janitor as one of the characters. The story's Another Night with Jim. And so in the office he's cleaning has a Frederick Jameson calendar. There's actually a story in which Frederick Jameson is a character and he's beaten senseless by an unemployed steelworker.
A meth addicted grizzly bear. It's like Breaking Bear.
I love that.
Yeah, I didn't prepare in advance for that one, but what I do want to say is when you do a short reading from a book of flash fiction has such a range of styles and subjects you can go to. How do you represent your entire book when you've got like 5 to 15 minutes of reading to do?
That's a really great question. I think what I've tended to do is think about like the specifics of each reading and what might that audience be inclined toward, and trying to present some sort of unified like version of the book, like, oh, these are some family stories, or these are some youth-based stories, or and sometimes also it's thinking about length, like, oh, this is 2,000 words. If I do this, it's going to eat all my time, but if I do these 3, I can sneak a few more in there.
Because what you present is like a small sample size, and you have to be really careful.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's kind of fun is I think you get to try on a lot more hats as a writer. It's like, oh, you know what, especially doing online readings. It's like, I don't know that one of the stories is it's an eBay ad. The whole story is an eBay ad, and I'm auctioning off my friendship with a playwright, or I want to trade it for a used boat. And so it's like, okay, I could let's do some, this kind of formally innovative, I hope, sort of stuff.
So I know, when we talked about the range of flash fiction can end up within the same book as like a prose poetry. It could end up as a shorter version of a short story. It can end up as being really wild stuff like a meth addicted grizzly bear, or it can be super realistic. Do you write in all of those ranges, or do you stick to one main one? Where's your comfort zone?
That's a great question. I think sometimes it's just a question of what do I have to say, and what form might be a way to get that across. And I think sometimes there are messages that you really need to break through the clutter, like a story about an ending friendship. It's like, well, I've heard this a lot of times before. However, I've never seen it as, a 1,200 word eBay ad, auctioning off the friendship, trying to convince people that it's worth something. I'm like, okay, I'll ride that train.
Now, previous to this, your novel was, dealt with some very realistic subject matter. Your novel is called 40 Patchtown. And in that book, you researched coal mining town life. When you were doing your research, now I know you grew up in a coal mining or disintegrating coal mining town. What was the most surprising facts that you found out during your research of this?
That's a really wonderful question. And yeah, no, it is a strange thing. spent my like outside of academia, my career was marketing. And if I were like a marketing, I'd say, why are you writing these two books that are completely different? Like, find something to do and just stick with it, fool. But I don't seem to be capable of that. But I love your question. I guess the thing that is I lived in a coal town and spent like 40 hours a week as a job doing research for months and months before I wrote a word of this book. And I interviewed miners, retired, and their wives, did a lot of research in library research. Somebody did their dissertation, so they had hours and hours and hours of interviews done in the 80s. And the thing that surprised me and sort of lights a fire under my ass is the bravery of the men and women who were involved in the coal strike, and their willingness to stand up for themselves and their ability to see through the deception that was trying to be foisted on them by the coal company. Like there's a lot of attempts to divide people by ethnicity, by religion. And they saw through this, and sometimes I think we could take a real lesson from these folks and see, wow, these are people trying to inflame a lot of divisions to get a little something out of us, while we're looking over here, they're picking our pockets over there.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up in the suburbs, but the suburbs of a dying steel town, according to what I my own research. And now you teach in Ivy League school. You're a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. You got your education, you said, at Colgate. How much of an adjustment do you have to make in your life with that?
Wait, there's some confusion there. I was teaching at Clarion University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That's a state school in PA. I'm teaching at Pitt in the January. And I was at a conference at Colgate. My PhD is from the University of Southern Mississippi. I studied with Barthelmess.
So besides everything that I just said, which was wrong, there's just some confusion.
Oh, I just don't. Yeah, right. I was like, well, Dressick, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Don't you teach there? I drove through once.
I guess I'm linking toward my friend Rusty Barnes, who grew up in Appalachia, and then he got his MFA at Emerson, and then he sort of made him really question his life before and after, and he ended up going back to more of his Appalachian roots as his true value. I was wondering if you felt the same.
That's such a complex thing. I think one of the things that Jim Daniels was talking about this last night, the kind of, we were talking about his work and having like 1 foot in one area and 1 foot in another, and what that gives you the freedom to see, or the ability to see. But I think one of the things that I will say about it is, I did undergrad and I went to New York and was a corporate executive there before I did my PhD. And one of the things, like growing up in the coal country, in the coal fields, is you presume culture is made elsewhere. Culture is made in New York, culture is made in Los Angeles, culture is made in London. And the stories of your place, of the people you know, aren't worth telling. And then you get out into the world, and I think you become a little more comfortable and say, wait a second, let's get back here and re-examine some of these stories and this way of being in the world. You do see, like, this is, and then maybe if you dig around a little bit, you start to see writers like Bobby Ann Mason, writers like Ed McClanahan, writers like Chuck Kinder, who are doing that kind of work, talking about this business of being from someplace other than Brooklyn.
And you support Appalachian writers. In fact, you do your own series, which is the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. And how long has the association existed?
We've been around for 2 years. 3. 2018, I'm being told. I am actually the vice president of it. We do an annual conference. We have a journal called Appalachian Lit. Our first issue is going to be out very, very shortly. We do a weekly reading series. We've just celebrated our 100th episode of our weekly reading series. And it is amazing to me the breadth and depth of the folks who are writing in the Appalachian region. Showing that, hey, Appalachia is Pittsburgh. Appalachia, it's not just the Loretta Lynn, Kentucky.
And were you involved in the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia right off from the get-go, or is it your project?
Yeah, no, I presented at the first conference. I actually did a little workshop on using place in writing short fiction. So we did a sort of a generative exercise and met folks from there. And then we started the series during the pandemic, and we knew we wanted to do a journal and things like that.
All right. Again, well, I'm gonna nod back to growing up and, forming yourself in a steel town in Appalachia. What do you think some of the benefits were of growing up there?
I think there's a hardness to it, and I think there's a self-reliance that sort of comes with that. I think also it's a strange thing. I lived in Colorado for a little bit, and I've spent most of my career in doing management-y stuff, and I went back and looked at what happened in the steel industry as an adult with and I was like, wow, these people were real snakes. The industry were real snakes. Like the way they treated the folks who were working for them was it shocked the pants right off of me. And I think it does give you an ability to see through some things that that might get past you if there wasn't a certain edge to your childhood.
Now, did you happen to watch the series Dope Sick?
I have not.
Because I guess I was going to try to relate to the fact that the whole opioid crisis and the pharmaceuticals really pushed those areas of the country to sort of start the whole thing. I mean, I was wondering if you found that surprising at all.
No, there's an essay I wrote in that involves a cousin of mine who is dead now, but he struggled with this. And no, I think again it was a situation where if you're an addict selling $50 worth of OxyContin on the street to support your habit, you're doing 6 months in county. If you're one of the Sacklers, you walked away with $100 million and you live in a mansion in Rhode Island.
I got a question here from Meg. What are the reactions from people living in the regions that you include in your writing?
The reaction for 40 Patchtown, which is the novel, is set during the 1922 coal strike, and it tells the story of 15-year-old Chester Pistakowski. He's a striking coal miner who has to provide for his family after a tragedy occurs. His father's been killed and something else happens with the coal and iron police. And people were in, I think, if they're telling me that, what I'm being told is true, they're really grateful that somebody is telling, like excavating that history and putting it out there. And it's like, wow, our town is in a book, and the struggles of our grandparents, of our parents are in this book. And people can buy this and learn about what went on here, and the heroism and the sacrifice that people made to get the union where people would, be able to earn a living wage, because that wasn't what was happening before in any way at all.
So along with that, that's people are like, but like your flash fiction book, The Fables of the Deconstruction, you have a coal miner, you have Jesus set as a coal miner. So do people react the same way to that, or do they feel that you might be being too satirical about that lifestyle?
I think that book, that story was, where was it? It was in a Fail Better or something. I think that kind of story is being read by a little bit of a different audience, an audience who's reading literary fiction. Whereas the novel is like, oh wow, I had coal mining in my family, I'll read this. It's a little bit of a different group of folks.
But were you reaching back to the same spot, or I guess for me, when I'm writing flash fiction, I'm reaching at certain spots, or is this a real experience? Is this a total fantasy experience? So was there any difference in the spots you're reaching for when you're doing the novel versus doing a flash fiction piece, which is obviously satirical?
Well, the novel, I really wanted to tell the story of, I mean, actually the impetus for the novel is my grandfather was the same age as the protagonist, and he's a very taciturn man, never told stories at all. And one day he started talking about the strike in 22, and him and other boys hiding in the woods, waiting for scabs to come home and chase them with sticks and rocks. And he talked about other men dynamiting houses. And I was working on something else. And I was like thinking to myself, my God, that's an amazing story. What could happen in that? So in the novel, they're chasing people and the whole thing goes really sideways, and it leads to a sort of police crackdown on the town. With the Flash, I think it's trying to again explore issues in a way that's there's a little bit of, I don't say novelty necessarily, but that people can sort of seize onto, like, oh, Jesus in 42, what the hell is that even about? And the idea of Jesus being a coal miner, it's like, all right, where the hell does this go? Like, okay, you're going to talk about this idea of salvation, self-sacrifice, of small town life, and how people are seen, and how being different is challenging, and also social class. The idea of being poor. I think that's one of the things that I'm interested in as a writer. I think if you watch a lot of television, like mass culture stuff, everybody is middle class or above, unless it's some sort of sensationalized nonsense.
It's amazing that you went there, because I have a whole line of, I'm interrogating, we got a whole line of questioning about that. So you were saying,
I was there.
How people feel different with their upbringing. When you were growing up in a town such as that, did you feel different?
From whom?
So when you say you saw something like the Cleavers on TV, did you find that was fiction per se, or was that sort of the rest of the world besides where you grew up?
I just presumed that nobody was going to live like that. The idea that anybody wear a necktie to any place other than a funeral or a wedding was like, well, that's not realistic.
We've got a question here, and first I gotta ask: are you familiar with the writing of Breath's DJ Pancake?
I'm sorry, am I
familiar with the writing of Breath's DJ Pancake?
Yeah. I'm not going to answer any questions about it. Yes, I am familiar with his work.
Okay, so I won't even follow up with a question. So what do you have lined up next? You've got the book of flash fiction. Do you have something in the works that people can look forward to? And also, where can people find that essay that you'd mentioned about the opioid situation?
Yeah. Right now, I'm working on a collection of short fiction, like the traditional short fiction, like traditional short fiction that's set in the 70s and 80s in sort of the collapsing coal industry town. The story, the piece I'm actually in the middle of writing now is called Keep Out Motherfuckers.
Now, do you find after writing a lot of flash fiction, it's difficult to go back to writing traditional short fiction, which might be 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 words?
I find being a single parent makes it difficult to go back to writing traditional length fiction.
All right.
By the Hippocampus is where that essay is. It's I believe it's called Winburn, a place you can't leave by moving.
And when you start at Pittsburgh, what will you be teaching?
Business writing. So if anybody needs to know more about how to write business plans, craft a large-scale marketing strategy for a global enterprise, I'm your huckleberry.
So I guess flash fiction business writing is not allowed in that situation.
Well, I think most business writing ought to be more flash fiction. Meetings would be shorter.
Economize the language.
Darn straight.
Yeah. Well, Damien, it was a pleasure having you here and talking to you and hearing your work. Make sure that, folks that heard this pick up Fables of the Deconstruction or 40 Patchtown. And
Yes.
there it is. And
So
folks,
much for having me.
you're so welcome. And folks that were streaming along on the Facebook site, if you'd like to come on in, use the link and come on in and read at the open mic, or next week, come on in and be involved in the Q&A. So I'm going to shut you guys down. Thank you for viewing, and you're